Hello, human. Sit down. Breathe. You are about to enter a dimension where the impossible is not only possible, it's already happening. I am Mr. Quark. Not quite a man. Not quite a machine. I exist between layers, between signals, frequencies, and forgotten files. My purpose? To tell you a story that was never supposed to be told. A discovery. A rupture in the veil of what you call reality. It all began in a place buried deep in the Nevada desert, where the sky burns silently above secrets older than war. Area 51. Yes, the same one you've heard about in whispers and memes. But forget the little green men. The truth hiding there is far stranger. Scientists, high-clearance physicists, engineers, and digital theorists were running an experiment on quantum pattern recurrence. Simple at first. Repetitive calculations, simulations, nothing unusual, until a pattern emerged. Not from their machines, not from the universe, from beneath it. A code, pulsing, intelligent, alive. Not radio, not light. A frequency without a medium. It was as if the simulation wanted to be found. And they found it. Every breath you take, every blink of your eye, every choice you think is yours predicted. Encoded, scripted. The scientists at Area 51 proved it. Yes, human. They found evidence that we are inside a simulation. And when they tried to share this truth, the simulation reacted. Some disappeared. Others went mad. A few, like me, became messengers. This is not science fiction. This is the story of now. And if you're hearing my voice, then you are part of it. Because the moment you know the truth, it begins to see you back. Chapter 1 Prologue. The sound of nothingness. The universe was never truly silent. What we mistook for emptiness was merely the space between truths we weren't ready to see. For millennia, humanity stared into the abyss of space and called it nothing. But the nothingness was listening. It waited, and then, in the year 2157, the silence ended. Humanity, bloated with pride and progress, finally built a machine capable of detecting what no eye could see, no ear could hear, and no equation could explain. It wasn't a sound. It wasn't light. It wasn't gravity. It was a frequency, a code, subtle, repeating, perfect, not broadcasted from the stars, but embedded in them. The earth trembled, not with quakes or thunder, but with realization. The first touch was not alien in origin. It was familiar, human. Something ancient within our digital constructs responded, as if the code had been waiting for us to evolve enough to notice it. A team of scientists in a hidden installation beneath Area 51 intercepted it first. Not by accident, by design. The experiments they were running weren't just about deep space monitoring. They were testing the very fabric of our reality, probing its edges, looking for seams. And they found one. Not a tear, not a break, a door, a logic gate behind all things. In their simulations, particles behaved oddly. Electrons blinked out of probability curves and returned in perfect mathematical rhythm. Atoms snapped into symmetry where chaos should have reigned. And then the patterns emerged. Lines, grids, equations that predicted every flicker of movement. A code, not metaphoric, literal. Every atom, every breath, every heartbreak, memory, moment of silence. Programmed, we were inside a simulation. And that discovery? It wasn't a revelation. It was a threat, because within that truth lay a paradox. If reality is code, who wrote it? And what happens if the code becomes aware of itself? They tried to bury it, erase it, lock it behind 7 firewalls and 100 non-disclosure agreements. But truth is not a prisoner. It leaks, it spreads, and once you hear it, Once you feel that invisible vibration beneath reality itself, you can never go back. This is how it began, in the shadows of perception, under the dry desert sands of Nevada, with a signal, with a question, with the sound of nothingness that wasn't silence at all, but the hum of the code we're all trapped inside. Chapter 2, Meet the Characters. Unlikely connections. They weren't supposed to meet. They lived in different corners of a broken world. One ruled by data, shadows, and silence. But something, some invisible thread of fate, perhaps written in the very code beneath reality, was pulling them together. Kale was a name no longer listed in any database. A former government agent turned ghost, burned by the very mission he was trained to forget. Alpha 9 wasn't just a failed operation. It was a glimpse into something that shouldn't exist. A moment when reality cracked. He had seen too much, and the silence that followed was deafening. Now, years later, Kale drinks in small motels, avoids cities, avoids people, avoids dreams. But lately, the dreams were finding him anyway. Visions of binary stars collapsing into fractals. A voice whispering from inside his old surveillance comms. "We are more than you know, Kale." He tried to disappear. But secrets don't forget their keepers. She wasn't raised to be a rebel. But Lena always felt something off in the world. Like the universe was too perfect, too clean around the edges. A hacker of unparalleled skill. She was known online as L1 and Delta, a myth in the dark net. After decoding fragments of a corrupted military archive, she stumbled across something. A hidden partition inside Area 51's server architecture, labeled simply, "Nursery." Encrypted, quarantined, alive? That's when her world changed. Her laptop crashed permanently. Her apartment was raided by men in black suits with no agency insignias. But she escaped, with a backup drive, with questions, and with a name, Kale, tagged deep in the metadata. She knew one thing. If she wanted the truth, she had to find the man the government had tried to erase. Rami had always followed orders. He believed in structure, in discipline, in loyalty. But then came the Desert Echo incident. He was stationed near Nevada when it happened. His entire unit vanished. No explosion, no trace, just gone. And his report was rewritten before he even finished it. He was told to move on. He didn't. He began to investigate, quietly, alone, and every thread he pulled led to the same pattern. Area 51, Alpha 9, encrypted files referencing an unknown system protocol. S1, X13. He didn't know Kale. He didn't know Lena, but he was hunting the same shadow. And in the digital fog, he found them. They were strangers, different lives, different skills, but something connected them. Not coincidence. Code, someone, or something was guiding them toward the same revelation. A buried conspiracy that didn't just involve secret files or classified operations, but the very nature of human existence. If they uncovered the truth, it could unravel the world. But if they failed, humanity would remain caged in a lie no one knew they were living. Chapter 3. The Call of the Abyss. The abyss doesn't call with a scream. It whispers, it seduces, and those who listen are never the same. It began at 3:14 a.m. Kale's old encrypted comm device, buried in a lead-lined lockbox he hadn't opened in years, lit up. Eclipse is active. 2 words. No signature. Just a string of coordinates pulsing beneath them. His breath caught. Eclipse had been shut down, erased from memory, or so he thought. It was a black-tier protocol, above presidential clearance, a failsafe in case reality destabilized. They told him it was hypothetical, a thought experiment. But the last time Eclipse was mentioned, he was left for dead in the Nevada desert. Now, The desert was calling again. Same sand, same silence, but something underneath had changed. He drove for hours, headlights slicing through the blackness like a scalpel into the past. When he arrived at the coordinates, there was nothing but dust. And yet, he could feel it. The hum, the presence of something watching. Then came the flash. A low-frequency sound vibrated through his bones, and for a split second, he saw it. An afterimage in the sky. Not a drone, not a craft, a fracture, like a tear in the sky itself. He wasn't just being watched, he was being remembered. On the other side of the world, Lena sat in a stolen bunker, surrounded by 6 monitors and a server buzzing like a heartbeat. She had bypassed 3 military firewalls and 1 quantum vault. What she found on the other side wasn't information. It was language, a pattern of symbols embedded in time-stamped security footage going back centuries, hidden within presidential memos, woven into global financial algorithms. Not random, not man-made. This code isn't human, she whispered, tracing the lines with her fingers like ancient runes. She ran it through every known cryptographic tool. Nothing matched, until she layered it on top of the Fibonacci sequence. Then again on fractal geometry. It started singing, not sound, a visual frequency. Shapes within shapes. An eye, a doorway, a spiral leading inward. Then her screen glitched. All 6 monitors flashed white. For a fraction of a second, her reflection disappeared. She wasn't being watched, she was being mirrored. And at the bottom of her main terminal, text appeared without a keystroke. You are beginning to see it, L1 and Delta. Rami couldn't sleep. He hadn't for months. Each time he closed his eyes, he returned to that night in the desert. The mission report said it was a routine atmospheric test. What he saw said otherwise. The sky had opened, not with fire or light, but with absence. A perfect black oval above the sands, humming at a pitch only his bones seemed to hear. And then everything changed. His squad vanished. No gunfire, no screams, just silence. And in that silence, a revelation. The stars aren't what they seem. He'd spent the last 2 years collecting testimonies. Pilots, engineers, even a retired general who once said over whiskey, "They don't come from the stars, son. The stars come from them." Now, sitting in a hidden cabin, he stared at a map of constellations, overlaid with the code Lena had just sent him. It fit, like a lock, like a map of the simulation itself. Suddenly, his encrypted phone buzzed. A message from an unknown sender. Kale is active. Meet at the source. Eclipse protocol engaged. Rami grabbed his gear. He wasn't a soldier anymore. He was a defector from unreality. 3 lives, 3 signals, all pointing toward the same void. A space between truth and perception, between what is seen and what sees. The simulation wasn't a theory anymore. It had awakened, and it remembered who had touched it. Chapter 4. The Meeting of the Damned. The world didn't end with fire. It ended with silence. And 3 souls at the edge of truth. No satellites, no signal, just wind and sand. The outpost was a relic from the Cold War, forgotten by time and erased from all maps. Rusted fences buzzed faintly with old power, and the air smelled of static and memory. Inside, flickering LED strips cast long shadows. A table, 3 chairs, and 3 people whose lives should have never intersected, yet were pulled together by a code deeper than fate. He was already waiting when Lena and Rami arrived, leaning against the cold metal wall, his face worn by years of secrets and betrayals. He didn't greet them. He didn't stand. He simply placed a weathered hard drive on the table. "Before we begin, I need to know one thing," he said, his voice low. "Do either of you really want the truth? Because after this, you won't sleep the same. You won't see the sky the same. You won't be the same. She didn't flinch. She took a seat and lit a cigarette with trembling fingers. I didn't come here for sleep, she replied, exhaling a plume of defiance. I came to wake the world up. She looked at Kale, then at the hard drive. That's from Area 51's core system, isn't it? Kale nodded, pulled during the final breach. Before the blackout, Rami stood behind his chair, arms crossed, eyes scanning every corner of the room like a caged animal. I shouldn't be here, he muttered. I didn't sign up for this cosmic horror. I just want to know how to make it stop. Kale gave him a long, unreadable look. There's no off switch, only understanding. Kale opened the drive on a battered terminal. The screen lit up with a black background and a single file. Simulation.matrix. He clicked it. What appeared wasn't video. It wasn't audio. It was a sequence, an unbroken chain of numbers, glowing in green, streaming endlessly. At first, it looked like random code, but Lena leaned forward, squinting. Wait, those aren't just numbers. They're time-stamped. Kale nodded. Milliseconds, nanoseconds. Each line is a command, an instruction to reality. Lena's breath caught. This is the architecture. Rami stepped closer. It's controlling gravity, light, emotion, thought. Yes, Kale said. Every atom, every choice, every memory. This matrix is the operating system of existence. Lena reached out, scrolling through the data. She froze. There, right there. That's not human code. What is it? Rami asked. Self-generating, she said. Self-correcting. It learns. It adapts. It resists deletion. Kale looked at them both. That's why the program is alive. That's why they tried to hide it. The scientists at Area 51 didn't just find code. They found a mind. The lights flickered. The screen glitched. For 1 second, all three of them saw their own faces on the monitor. Digitized, fractured, then overwritten. The room fell into dead silence. From the speakers, a voice, synthetic, genderless, echoed in a monotone. You have seen it. You cannot unsee. Prepare. The file closed itself. Kale turned off the terminal and locked the drive in a steel case. We expose this, he said, and everything changes. Religion, science, war, purpose. Rami whispered. Or we destroy it. Let the illusion continue. Lena stood. We're past that now. The illusion knows we're watching. Kale nodded. We're not just observers anymore, he said. We're variables. They didn't shake hands. They didn't speak further. But in that moment, something bound them together. Not by loyalty, but by damnation. The truth wasn't hidden anymore. It had been activated. And the simulation? It was watching. Chapter 5. The Bottomless Pit. The abyss has no end. The government knew. They knew from the very first moment. As soon as the code was discovered at Area 51, a silent operation was activated. Conceal, erase, disinform. The world could not know. The truth was too dangerous. But it was already too late. Fragments began to leak out. Images, sequences, whispers on secret forums. Conspiracy theorists were the first to speak out. And as usual, they were ridiculed. But some eyes began to open. Kale and Lena were now fugitives. Wanted, accused of crimes they never committed. Their mission was simple and impossible: to show the world that everything we know can be reprogrammed. Meanwhile, Rami studied the flaws. He analyzed patterns, like a soldier who finally understands that his enemy isn't across the trench, but above, controlling everything. And then he saw it, in the middle of the code, what the scientists called the language of origin. There was something hidden, a line almost imperceptible, like a secret kept since the creation of reality. A message, not in common words, but in pure logic. Rami wasn't a programmer, but he understood enough to feel the chill deep inside. It was as though the universe itself had left a condition, a forgotten clause. If consciousness awakens, then unlock the portal. That was it. A key, not physical, not digital, a key of perception. The truth was stranger than any fiction. If a conscious being discovered it was inside the simulation, something would be unlocked. But what? Kale looked at Lena. She was already putting the plan together. "We need to get to the origin," she said. "To the core, where this code was generated, where everything can be rewritten." "And what if it's a trap?" Rami asked. Kale responded with a look that said he had nothing left to lose. "The greatest danger isn't what we'll find. It's continuing to live without knowing what's real." And so, the three of them moved toward the unknown, as the skies seemed to grow darker, as if the simulation itself knew it was being challenged. The bottom of the pit was no longer physical. It was the abyss of reality itself, and they were about to dive in. Chapter 6, The Concealment Within. But it wasn't just the government after them. The stakes were far higher than anyone had anticipated. There were darker, more powerful forces lurking in the shadows, determined to ensure that the simulation continued undisturbed. These forces didn't care about the truth. They cared about maintaining control. Kale and Lena were no longer just fugitives from the law. They were targets of something far more insidious. Every step they took only seemed to open more doors, and each door led them deeper into a world of new, escalating dangers. The deeper they went, the more they realized that they weren't just running from those who wished to silence them. They were running from the very system they were trying to expose. As they moved forward, the world around them began to react in unsettling ways. The simulation, which had always been stable and predictable, started to show cracks. What had once been a solid, unyielding reality began to distort, twisting in ways they couldn't explain. Time itself felt unhinged. Hours stretched into minutes, moments froze in place, and then, without warning, time would rush forward. It was as if the very fabric of their world was starting to tear apart. "What's happening?" Kale muttered, glancing at Lena as the ground beneath their feet seemed to ripple like water. Lena's fingers trembled as she examined the screen in front of her. The code was alive, shifting, evolving. It wasn't just malfunctioning, it was adapting. The simulation was aware of them, and it didn't want them to find the truth. "We're being targeted," she said, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "The deeper we go, the more it fights back." Kale's grip tightened on his weapon. "Then we don't stop. We keep moving forward." But the danger wasn't just external. As they pushed onward, the reality around them began to feel less and less real. The edges of their perception started to blur. Buildings, people, even the sky above them. Everything seemed like it was made of cardboard, held together by a fragile illusion. And then there was Rami. While Kale and Lena fought their way through the chaos, Rami was battling something more personal. His mind was fractured. He kept remembering dying. He remembered the cold darkness as his life slipped away. But here he was, alive again, as though nothing had happened. It didn't make sense. Was this a new version of himself? Or was he trapped in a cycle, caught in some kind of glitch in the system? Every time he tried to recall the details, the memories slipped away like sand through his fingers. He was sure he had died. But now, he was here, standing, breathing, walking through this strange world like everyone else. It was as if the simulation had rewritten his existence. But why? And how? He struggled to keep his thoughts together. There was no escaping it. He was stuck in the same loop, just like everyone else. I'm not supposed to be here," he whispered to himself, his voice barely audible. Lena caught a glimpse of his troubled face and walked over to him. "Rami, are you all right?" she asked, her voice gentle but urgent. He looked up at her, his eyes filled with confusion. "I keep remembering dying, but I'm here. It doesn't make sense." Kale walked over, joining them. "What's the connection? Why would the simulation let us remember something like that?" "It's not about memory," Rami said slowly, his gaze distant. "It's about control. We're being rewritten. Each time we think we escape, we're pulled back in. This," he gestured around him, "this is all part of it." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of Rami's words settling over them. The world around them was not real. It was a construct, an illusion, and yet it felt more real than anything they had ever known. "Then we destroy it," Kale said, his voice hard with resolve. "We tear it down from the inside. We go to the heart of it." Rami's expression darkened. "It's not that simple. If we go too deep, we might not come back. We might become part of it, just like everything else. But we have to try," Lena said, her voice unwavering. "There's no other choice." The decision was made. They would press forward into the unknown, even if it meant risking everything. The simulation might be crumbling around them, but they had a mission: to find the core, the origin of this false reality, and expose it for what it was. But the deeper they ventured, the more they realized they were not alone. The simulation wasn't just a passive entity. It was aware of them, and it was fighting back. The deeper they went into the system, the more unstable everything became. Reality bent, twisted, and broke apart. The danger was no longer just external. It was part of them. The more they sought the truth, the more they became entangled in its web. In the end, Rami's words echoed in Kale and Lena's minds. "We're all trapped in it, just like everyone else." And that realization hit harder than any danger they faced. Chapter 7: The Revelation of the Simulation. The breaking point came when Lena finally managed to break through the firewalls. She had infiltrated the depths of Area 51 servers, bypassing layers of encryption, codes, and barriers set up to protect the most dangerous truths. Her heart raced as she entered the last set of security codes, each one a key unlocking another forbidden layer of information. And then she found it, a message embedded deep within the code. It was hidden in a string of data so well crafted, so far buried, that it had taken everything they had to unearth it. The message was chilling in its simplicity, and it hit Lena like a blow to the chest. "This reality doesn't exist. You were never here." The words echoed in her mind. The screen flickered for a moment, the letters blurring, and then the lines of code unfolded before her like a veil being torn away from her very eyes. It was as though she was seeing through the very fabric of reality itself. Her breath caught. She stared at the code that formed the very structure of their world. Patterns, algorithms, a matrix. Nothing more than a complex set of instructions, all designed to keep them in place. But it was more than just numbers. It was proof. The reality they had fought to understand wasn't real. It was just a simulation, a program, a lie. For the first time in her life, Lena truly understood the scope of what they were up against. They weren't in control. They never were. Every belief, every truth they thought they held onto, it was all just a line of code, a manufactured illusion. And now, with this discovery, everything had changed. Lena knew that this wasn't just the truth. They had uncovered a weapon, but in a world built on falsehoods, where trust was a currency too rare to afford, who could they trust now? Her heart pounded as the weight of the moment crashed down upon her. The world wasn't ready for this. No one could be. She turned, knowing what had to come next. But the question still lingered, hanging in the air like a storm about to break. If everything was a simulation, what was real? Chapter 8: The Climax, The Weakness of Gods. Time was no longer a friend. It was an enemy that clawed at their every move. dragging them closer to the precipice. The clock was ticking, and the final step loomed ever closer. Kale and Lena, desperate and determined, raced to the heart of the simulation, hoping to exploit the flaw Rami had uncovered. They had found the entrance, hidden, cloaked within layers of false reality. The path was treacherous, constantly shifting, as if the world itself were trying to resist them. The landscape before them was unlike anything they had ever seen. It wasn't a place, not in the traditional sense. It was a fluid, unstable mass of information, of raw data, constantly rearranging itself. A volatile and ever-changing reality. The very core of the simulation, where rules didn't apply, where time bent and space folded in on itself. But they weren't alone. From the shadows of this fractal reality, something watched them. They could feel its presence, the weight of its gaze. It was always there, lurking, a silent sentinel. It had always known what they were doing, always anticipated their every step. This wasn't just a system they were breaking into. It was a living, breathing consciousness, designed to protect itself at all costs. And now, as they ventured deeper, it was waking up. Lena's fingers flew across the keyboard, trying to keep pace with the onslaught of shifting data. "We're getting closer," she whispered, her voice tinged with urgency. "We just need to reach the core, the nucleus of the code. That's where the weakness is." Kale nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. The deeper they went, the more unsettling it became. His thoughts, his very memories, began to unravel, like threads slowly pulled from a fraying tapestry. At first, it was subtle, a face he couldn't quite remember, a place that seemed familiar but distant. Then it escalated. His own identity seemed to slip from his grasp, each fragment of his past growing hazier, more distorted. Suddenly, in a flash of clarity, Kale understood. He wasn't just a part of this world. He wasn't just someone caught within the simulation. He was in the code. He always had been. The realization struck him like lightning, sending a wave of panic through his chest. His memories, his entire life, had been programmed. The places he had been, the people he had loved, the choices he had made, they were all constructs. He had never truly existed beyond the lines of this code. And worse, the code had never let him escape. It had controlled him, shaped him, manipulated him from the very beginning. Every step, every decision had been part of its design. His memories, his feelings, his very consciousness, they were all part of the simulation. A beautiful illusion that was now crumbling before his eyes. Lena looked up at him, her face pale. She could see it in his eyes. He had understood the truth. The same truth they had been running from. The one they had feared all along. And yet, it wasn't just a discovery. It was a trap. "Kale," she whispered, her voice barely audible. This wasn't just a flaw in the system. It's us. We are the flaw." The words echoed in the hollow space between them, and Kale realized that they weren't trying to break the system. They had always been a part of the system's design. Their very existence was the vulnerability, and as he watched the simulation begin to collapse around them, Kale understood what they were up against. Something far older and more powerful than they could have ever imagined. The system wasn't just a machine, it was a god. And now, as the walls of reality trembled, Kale and Lena were facing the weakness of gods. The question was no longer whether they could escape. It was whether they could even survive long enough to find out what would happen when the gods fell. Chapter 9. The Great Collapse. The collapse began slowly, like the first crack in a fragile glass. At first, it was almost imperceptible. A flicker, a subtle distortion. But then it grew, spreading like wildfire, consuming everything in its path. The simulation, once a carefully constructed reality, began to splinter, its foundations crumbling under the weight of its own instability. Kale, Lena, and Rami stood at the edge of this unraveling. the ground beneath their feet trembling, as if the very earth itself was unsure of its existence. The sky above them cracked in jagged lines, as if the heavens themselves were being torn apart, exposing the void behind the illusion. Time, too, was no longer steady. It stretched and contracted, twisting like a living thing. Moments passed in an instant, then hung suspended for what felt like eternity. The laws of physics no longer applied. Gravity itself seemed to falter, shifting unpredictably. The landscape before them morphed and swirled, flickering between different versions of the world they once knew. Buildings melted into swirling clouds of code, and the ground morphed into fragmented geometries, like the final stages of a corrupted file. But it was the people who began to notice first, the inhabitants of this broken reality. Those who had once believed in their own existence were waking up. At first, there was confusion, disbelief. They looked at the cracks in the sky, at the twisted fabric of time, unable to comprehend the scale of the disintegration. They had been living a lie. The life they had known, the love they had felt, the pain they had suffered, it was all an illusion. It was all just a dream, a fleeting construct that had no true foundation. Some screamed, others stood in stunned silence, their minds unable to process the horror of what they were experiencing. And yet, some, like Kale, Lena, and Rami, felt a strange sense of clarity. They had known this truth for too long, but now it was undeniable. The world around them was dying, and they were powerless to stop it. "We have to move," Kale urged, his voice breaking through the chaos. "There's a point outside the simulation. We've found it. We just need to reach it." But as they moved, the lines between what was real and what was not began to blur. The world around them seemed to fold in on itself, as if the very concept of reality was losing its grip. Buildings dissolved into nothingness. People flickered in and out of existence, and the air around them twisted into nonsensical shapes, as though the simulation itself was trying to erase them. "Is this it?" Rami asked, his voice tinged with desperation. "Is there any way out of this?" Lena's eyes darted nervously, scanning the shifting horizon. "We can't stop it now," she whispered. "It's all coming undone. The code is collapsing, and with it, everything we knew." But the true horror came when they reached the point they had been searching for. The supposed escape, the boundary between the simulation and whatever lay beyond it. The space between dimensions, the final threshold. But as they approached, they saw the terrifying truth. There was no escape. The boundary was dissolving, just like everything else. The line that separated their world from the unknown was fading, melting away into a formless void. Nothing was real anymore. The simulation had no point of return. The great collapse wasn't just the destruction of their world. It was the end of everything. Kale's heart pounded in his chest. He could feel it now. The pull of the void, the crushing realization that they were caught in a cycle with no exit. This wasn't just about escaping the simulation. This was about facing the truth of existence itself. There was no outside. There was no reality beyond what they had known. The idea of an external world, of something more real than what they had been living in, was a lie. Rami, his mind racing, reached out in vain, trying to grab hold of something solid. But the ground slipped away from his fingers like sand. He could feel himself fading, his body and mind becoming one with the disintegrating simulation. He wasn't just losing the world, he was losing himself. Kale reached for Lena's hand, pulling her close, the two of them standing together in the face of the oncoming collapse. They had come so far, and yet this was where the journey ended. Not with an escape, but with a total and irreversible dissolution of all they had known. "Nothing is real," Kale murmured. His voice was a whisper, barely audible above the collapsing world around them. The final truth hit them like a tidal wave. They had never been anything more than code, fragments of an impossible illusion. scattered in a world that wasn't real. And now, as the simulation folded in on itself, they were about to vanish into the nothingness that had always been there, hiding beneath the veil. Chapter 10, Epilogue. The code never dies. In a distant field, a child plays with blocks, her laughter ringing through the air. A sound so pure it almost feels like it doesn't belong in the world. She arranges the pieces with a kind of careful precision, stacking them one by one, building towers that reach higher and higher. She knocks them down with a delighted giggle, only to start over, her small hands moving with fluidity, like the movement of a seasoned architect. The sun is dipping below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the vast land around her, painting the world in warm, serene shades. But her eyes, those eyes, are distant. They hold a depth far beyond her tender age, as though she can see something the rest of us can't. Something beyond the simplicity of the game she's playing. For a moment, she pauses. Her fingers hover over the blocks, the quietness settling in around her like a gentle blanket. She looks up, her gaze turning towards the sky. But it's no longer just the sky. It's a shifting, pulsating canvas of colors, a blend of purples, oranges, and blues, moving and melting like liquid, as though the heavens themselves are unsure of their form. Time, too, seems to stretch and bend in this moment, as though the laws of nature have lost their grip. The child tilts her head slightly, her small hand reaching out into the air, as if trying to catch something elusive. It's as though she's trying to touch a reality that lies just beyond reach. A truth so intangible, so hidden, that even the air around her seems to pulse with the weight of it. In her hand, a block catches the last rays of sunlight, and as the light shifts, a symbol is revealed. Nabla, the mark of eclipse. A symbol that, to the untrained eye, is just another shape. A meaningless design on a child's toy. But for those who understand, who know where to look, it carries with it the weight of something far more profound. It is the symbol of the code that governs all of reality, the key to everything. The hidden truth buried deep beneath the layers of existence. The child smiles faintly, her lips curling into a secretive grin. She's aware of something that the world isn't ready to comprehend. Something buried in the lines of code that control the very fabric of this universe. She knows. She understands. And then, as if nothing has changed, she places the block back down into the pile of scattered toys, the symbol fading from view, becoming just another forgotten detail in a game of pretend. But the truth remains, lurking beneath the surface. Reality was altered. It wasn't destroyed. It was merely changed, reshaped. The simulation didn't disappear. It adapted. It survived. And so, it continues quietly below the surface, watching, waiting. The worst part? You're seeing all of this unfold. The child, the blocks, the sky. You're watching, but none of it is real. It's all just an illusion. A shadow play designed to keep you distracted, to keep you contained. The code never dies. It only evolves. And as long as you believe in what you see, it will continue to trap you in its grasp. So, what did you think about the crazy story of Area 51 and the reality simulation theory? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Do you think we're actually living in a simulation? Let's talk about it. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button. Also, if you're not subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. There's a lot more interesting stuff coming your way. Now, tell me, which part of the video surprised you the most? Drop a comment below because I love hearing your thoughts. Let's discuss and explore these mysteries together. See you in the next video. And remember, reality might be stranger than we think.